Well, folks, hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of RfRx. I see so many familiar faces here, and I'm so glad that you're here to join us for another Monday night. My name is Eric Wells, and I am the support group director for Recovering from Religion. And with me, co-hosting today, you've seen him before, Mr. Rob Palmer, helpline agent and ambassador for Recovering from Religion. So, Rob, why don't you tell us about what RfRx is?
Oh, for the people who haven't heard before, this is what we call our weekly meetings, where we host guests who discuss topics relevant to the folks in this community. It's not a replacement for the online community or the support groups, which you'll hear about later. These talks and presentations aim to provide good information, advice, or coping skills. Pertinent questions and comments and inquiries can all be sent via email to, we're going to put that in the chat. And as a matter of fact, if you miss any of these live, we have 93 now that are on our YouTube channel. All of those are uploaded, so you can find those at the address given there.
Yeah, folks, normally at the beginning of each RfRx, we have a poll, but not this time. We don't have one this time. So if you're looking for one, I'm sorry, we weren't able to get that together in time. But with that being said, we have used the initialism RFR quite a bit so far, even in like the first opening minutes. And you're probably wondering, if you're new here, you're like, what is RFR? Well, that stands for Recovering from Religion. And here at Recovering from Religion, we're a nonprofit organization, and we aim to offer hope, healing, and support to those who are struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. And we have quite a few programs that are really designed around that whole mission of hope, healing, and support. Rob, start us off. Tell us, how do we offer healing?
Well, yes, so that involves our helpline. We offer 24/7 support via our online chat or phone calls. We have some numbers for English-speaking countries, but you can make a web call from anywhere, and you could chat in using our main site from anywhere. You can even schedule a call back at a convenient time. Volunteers like me, we offer empathetic support without judgment or criticism. And what we do is we listen and we suggest resources, which are also directly available via our resource page. But we will, help you navigate all that and let you know what we have available for your particular set of issues. And what about hope?
Hope, hope, hope. Hope doesn't necessarily float, but we have a program that is designed around our hope. This is, a lot of hope can come from, I know that when I was sort of in my dark time of transitioning out of religion, when I was hearing what other people had went through, and kind of recognizing myself and some of their struggles, like that really kind of gave me some hope. That gave me this light at the end of the tunnel. Not the dark tunnel that we talk about when people are dying or something like that, but the hope at the, like, it is a dark time that many of us go through as we're transitioning out of religion. And so hope is a powerful thing to have, that you're not alone and that you can get out of that. And so we have two different ways to offer hope through RFR. The first is the blog. The blog is a fantastic resource of amazing articles sharing all sorts of stories and talks about how people have gotten themselves out of religion and what their struggles were. And there's a lot of stories there that really tug on my heartstrings. And I'd recommend you check them out. I'm going to go and drop a link here. And then the second thing is our podcast. Right now, the podcast is all the RFRXs, but way back in the beginning, there's about 100 episodes or so of podcasts that bring on people to share their stories. In addition to that, we have support, the support side of our mission. And the support side we have the peer support groups. And in fact, I started one up yesterday for the Baltics, one of our newest ones. And then there was a bunch of people who were able to get together face to face and talk in a safe space, share in a safe space, things that they've been going through, things they've been struggling with that all relate to about how religion harmed them. And currently, we have over 60 groups around the world, and you can find the nearest one to you at the link I'm going to drop into the chat. Secular Therapy Project, you want to cover that, Mr. Rob?
Yes. So this is our offshoot project that connects you with a licensed secular mental health care provider. They're carefully screened to make sure that they're appropriately licensed in their state or country. They maintain a secular practice. I mean, they're not going to tell you to pray to Jesus or Allah to resolve your problems. and they exclusively use evidence-based treatments.
Exactly. And the difference between the Secular Therapy Project compared to the helpline or the support groups is that the helpline support groups is peer support. And so there is no professional training or treatment within those two programs. But the Secular Therapy Project will connect you with that professional training. So thank you very much. Well said, Mr. Rob. In addition to that, we had one other piece that we kind of identified as something that people needed as they were transitioning out of religion. And that's really community. And we have set up a very safe place that is not available through the internet, that's readily searchable through the internet. You can't just get there. You have to have an invite. And it is our RfR online community. And this is an online platform with people who get to meet and share their stories if they have similar backgrounds. For example, if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, there is a channel all dedicated to folks who are struggling with LGBT issues and coming out of religion. If you are current or former military, there's a channel for that. An ex-Muslim, there's a channel for that. And so you can find the community that you specifically want to talk to for some of the issues that you're specifically struggling with through this RfR online community in Slack. How do you get there, you might ask? Well, head on over to the RfR website, recoveringfromreligion.org. You either call in or chat with a helpline agent. They'll ask you a couple of questions to see if you're a good fit, and then they'll send you an invite. So that's how you can join the online community. Now, if you want to just get yourself thrown into a fantastic community of non-believers and just have at it, have some great conversations, make some amazing friends, I would recommend you guessed it, the Atheist Community Discord. Right now, they are streaming this show into their Discord channel, and it's a fantastic place to be. A lot of the RfR folks that you will probably come in contact with if you talk on the helpline or the chat, they are also in there too, having a blast and communicating. So I've dropped a link into the chat, and you can go and join them if that's something that's interesting to you. All right, I got to get some water. Volunteering. Here's the last kind of part, volunteering. One of the things that really, really helped me kind of transition out and get myself sort of straight was giving some of my time to recovering from religion. And I got to say, I feel like I have gotten way more out of volunteering than I ever have put in. In fact, this show right here that you're seeing right here, I'm doing this all for free. Everybody else is here doing it all for free, and we're volunteering it completely. And I am getting so much out of these conversations that we have, just like you are. So if that is something that you want to do, if you've got some spare time, I think you could like to help make the world a better place for folks who are coming to recovering from religion, needing the help, needing the services, and needing just somebody to listen to. Take a look at volunteering. I've dropped a link into the chat for that. All right, just like every single show, we have a format. And the format is, for the first hour, we're going to have a discussion about our topic. The topic being the most dangerous woman in Tennessee. So for that hour, we'll have that discussion. And during that hour, you're probably going to have some questions. If you do, please type them into the chat. That goes for you over at the Atheist Community Discord. We're monitoring those questions as well. And then during the second part of this conversation, we will have a Q&A session for about 20 or 30 minutes. And we will be asking, Rob and I will be asking the guest your questions. So type them into the chat and we'll collect them up. After that, we're going to have some closing thoughts from our founder and president, Dr. Darrel Ray. And then finally, we're going to shut the recording off. We're going to open up the lines and we're going to hang out, hopefully hang out with our guest for a little bit if she's able to stick around, and just have a good old time. This is kind of a really fun time to have if you haven't participated in the hangout before. Well, I've been talking a hell of a lot, Rob. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our amazing guest for today?
Our amazing special guest. Gayle Jordan is an estate planning attorney and a former Southern Baptist who left the faith years ago when her then teenagers began asking questions she could not answer. Her research led her and her children into the light of reason and rationality. Years later, she still feels the effects, both negative and positive, of the dramatic shift in perspective and attitude. It's this sympathy and compassion that drives her to reach out to help others to navigate the emotional and physical process involved in leaving one's faith. Gayle lives in Oregon, where she raises goats and chickens, I didn't know that, and is trying her hand at grape growing at her sunny hillside home, affectionately known as Peak Heathen. She blogs about a variety of topics at Happy Healthy Heathen. Take it away, Gayle Jordan.
Thank you, Rob. What a joy to be in front of the hometown crowd. I've given this talk a number of times, but never to my own folks. And so you will forgive me a little nervousness. Thank you all for coming. I say that every week, but especially thank you all for coming tonight. Seeing your beautiful faces gives me confidence and encouragement to be able to tell this story. The story's a couple of years old, several years old, but it seems like it's almost more relevant now than it was before. So if you'll bear with me for 1 second. Outstanding. Well, as I said, I'm so very glad to be with you tonight. If you have been to RfRx before, you do know that I am the executive director of Recovering from Religion. It is so near and dear to my heart, and I have loved this opportunity to come together week to week to hear these presentations. And now it's my turn to tell a little bit about my story. It's a little bit of a narrative. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to turn it into kind of a story for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions, and I'm happy to answer them. This is the story of my experience running for office in Tennessee in a rural 5-county district just a few miles south of Nashville. And I promise it's a whole lot more interesting than that made it sound. I ran for this particular office in 2016, and I got the usual 35% of votes that Democrats get in Tennessee. And then in 2018, the seat became an open seat. And I talked with my family, one of whom is here with the same last name as I do. You can probably identify her. I counseled with my family and loved ones about the opportunity to run. And one more time, I'm going to say this statement. Recovering from Religion is a nonprofit, and the political views that I'm sharing with you tonight belong to me and only to me. So when I first began to consider running, as I said, I talked with my family, and we decided that this was the time and the place was right to run, provided that we ran our campaign based on transparency, integrity, ethics, and dignity. In other words, there was just going to be no playing in the mud for us. Tennessee has had a Republican supermajority for years, and it was going to take all of our effort and time to run on the issues that were important to our district: healthcare, education, infrastructure, the usual. So before I start talking about what the campaign was like, I want to share something with you. Now, this was true just prior to my run in 2018 about the state of Tennessee. Tennessee was 10th highest poverty in the country. We had the 8th shortest lifespan. We were number 42 on the comprehensive ranking of quality of life. We were 15th from the bottom in education. We were 9th from the bottom in per student spending. And we were the 3rd highest prescriber of opioids among all 50 states. Additionally, there were more deaths in Tennessee due to the opioid crisis than deaths by automobile accidents in 2017. Republican supermajority, 10 years. Now, the next screen is going to be black for just a second, and let me say, I recognize what I'm asking you to do. I know you have seen enough political videos to last a lifetime, and I'm going to ask you to sit through one more. It's only 60 seconds, and it will give you more of an idea about what we were running on.
I've been a Rutherford County resident most of my adult life. I raised my 4 children on the hard work and fresh air of farm life, and they're all Tennessee public school graduates. I was a stay-at-home mom until my kids began to leave for college, when I returned to my long-held dream of attending law school, and I became a lawyer in 2015. When I'm asked how I would govern, I have a simple 3-question test. Is it rational? Does this legislation solve an identified problem in the state of Tennessee? Is it reasonable? Does this legislation make the very best use of your tax dollars and mine? And is it right? Does this legislation do the most good for the largest number of people with the least negative impact for the fewest number of people? My vision for District 14 provides health care for the working folks who need it while saving our rural hospitals, compensating our teachers with higher wages and tangible benefits while eliminating unnecessary student testing, and addressing our opioid addiction problem by destigmatizing treatment, holding the pharmaceutical industry accountable, and legalizing cannabis. My name is Gayle, and I'm asking for your vote on March 13th in the special election for District 14.
Radical, right? That is as mainstream a Democratic platform as you can get. However, there's one more teensy little thing that you need to understand what is going to happen in this narrative. And it's this. I had been an out loud and proud atheist for over 10 years in my town in Tennessee. And while I didn't run on it, I didn't attempt to hide from it either. And as vanilla and conventional and as related to the issues as our campaign was, when this video was released, the Tennessee GOP lost its collective damn mind. For example, this fella believes that in his 40 years of politics, I'm among the most dangerous women he may have come across. And this guy, this Randy McNally, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Tennessee. Also, the chairman of the state GOP party issued a statement to the Democratic U.S. Senate candidate and the state Democratic gubernatorial candidate, urging them to disclaim me from the party for my un-American beliefs, which both of those gentlemen fortunately refused to do that. So in spite of all this drama and all these statements from the Tennessee GOP leadership, we began to rise in popularity. Volunteers streamed into our county offices, offering to knock doors and make phone calls, and donations came in unsolicited. If you have ever worked on a campaign, you know what this piece of paper is. It's called print media, and it's a big, glossy, postcard type snail mail piece of mail. These archaic, old-fashioned things cost about $1 per voting household. So one mailing to 50,000 households, which was about what our district was, would cost $50,000. As we began to surge in visibility and word of mouth, the Tennessee Republican Party got busy with mailers. And honestly, credit where credit is due. Kudos to the GOP bro who thought of combining the crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy thing with the pussy hat. Edgy move, boys. Notice too that the kooky ideas they credit me with are being pro-choice, supporting healthcare, and supporting education. Yet flyer after flyer, we continued the game. More supporters, more volunteers, more donations, and the flyers kept coming. Keep in mind that each time one of these things appears on the screen, it's $50,000 to our opponent. Our entire fundraising budget was $50,000, a goal which we proudly met. Okay, so now I need to tell you something about the next two slides. I'm not particularly proud of them, but I'm not ashamed enough to take them out of my talk. So take that for what it's worth. If you're going to run for office and you're going to spend $50,000 to mail 50,000 flyers to 50,000 voting households, do you think you could proofread them first? Just me? And if you're going to spend $50,000 to mail 50,000 flyers to 50,000 voting households and you misspell the state in which you are running, you are automatically disqualified. Can I get an amen? Okay. In spite of look at this distorted picture. In spite of the ugliness and the bigotry, we continued to climb. More voters registered, more volunteers calling and knocking on doors, more momentum for the campaign. Our strategy in this election is what is known in political circles as the get out the vote strategy. Remember, this was a special election, so we were on a compressed 12-week cycle and we had no time for what's known as a persuasion campaign. We sent postcards to every Democratic voter in our district 3 times at a cost of exactly $0. Thousands and thousands of postcards. Every single postcard we sent was bought, handwritten, and postage paid by volunteers through a grassroots effort known as Postcards to Voters. And if you don't know about Postcards to Voters, look them up. It's a fabulous way to kind of be an armchair activist in your own home. And the Republican flyers kept coming and we kept climbing. But then this happened. Now, I got to give you a little backstory on this one. In December of 2017, I had had the honor and privilege of marrying 2 dear friends. In celebrating the day, and with their permission, I posted on my public Facebook page the picture of the joyous event, and in classic Jordan snark, we're really good at that, in classic Jordan snark, my status read, doing my part to destroy the fabric of America. Funny, because I'm funny, I'm hilarious, invite me to your parties. So the Tennessee GOP lifted the image, turned it into a flyer, and sent it to 50,000 households in the district. What they didn't know is this. These two men are constituents in the district. One of these men is an Air Force veteran of the Iraqi War, and it won't surprise you, is diagnosed with combat-related PTSD. On a beautiful sunny morning in March of 2018, this honorable soldier walked to his mailbox, pulled out a flyer, and there was a photo of the happiest day of his life being mocked by the Tennessee Republican Party, sent to thousands. I will share here that Shane and Landon pursued legal action against the GOP, and in the interest of their privacy, that's as much as I'll say, other than to recognize them if they ever see this talk on video, that Shane and Landon, I thank you first for your service to our country, and thank you, and I apologize for involuntarily sacrificing your privacy to the altar of bigotry in Tennessee. And yet we still climb more volunteers, more postcards, more door knocks, more calls, more donations, more endorsements, teachers, union members, senior adults, students, homemakers. The primary had come and gone. I had had no opponent, but the Republicans did, and voter turnout was dismal. Between our momentum and the wretched primary turnout, my opponent's campaign then made the decision to engage in unethical and unconstitutional behavior. Now, I'm not going to make you read this whole thing. I know you can see it, but I want to start with the first 5 words. Good afternoon, pastors and friends. This letter was written by my opponent's campaign manager. It goes on to tell about the upcoming election and talks about me being the baby-eating, goat-sacrificing, Satan-worshiping heathen that I am. And the obligatory paragraph about how much he loved baby Jesus credentials. And then we get to the money shot. First Amendment much? Say it with me if you know it. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So this might come as news to some of you, but it makes me so proud to say that when you try to breach the wall of separation of church and state in America, you're going to get national attention from the secular universe. Well, you're going to get it from both sides. The same day I got retweeted by Dawkins, I got retweeted by, what's the word I'm looking for here? This, let's call him a person. And it didn't stop there. We had a spot on NPR. Our campaign was in USA Today. And then came the day when the entire space-time continuum was torn asunder. In the Republican primary, my opponent ran against a Tea Party candidate, and my opponent ran a similar dirty and disgusting campaign against him. So dirty, in fact, that this happened. I was endorsed by the Tennessee Tea Party. The Tennessee Tea Party endorsed the liberal, atheist, activist woman Democrat. What is even happening? We had resisted in the face of all of that bigotry. We rallied against the ugliness, the fearful and hateful rhetoric, the attack on religious liberty, the mocking of an honorable soldier, all of the time and money and passion and effort pushed back against the status quo. We fought and resisted and stayed true to our ethics, and not one time did we violate our agreement to run a moral, clean, issue-based campaign. But the letters to the pastors had found their mark. And if you don't think that the dozens of churches and pastors to whom this letter was sent didn't immediately comply and preach from the pulpit the message of fear and divisiveness in politics, well, I beg your pardon, but you don't know Tennessee and you don't know religion. So let's drill down to what happened here. So the demographic of the non-religious is the fastest growing demographic in the country, as it is in Tennessee. Mostly, we're young and diverse. Present company, Darrel and I accepted. The church-going demographic is just the opposite. It's older and whiter. So this GOP candidate targeted this group of old white voters, enlisted the pastors to spread his message of the heathens are coming, the heathens are coming. This group of senior adults, terrified, went out and voted just as he planned, then retreated back into their homes and locked their doors, more angry and more afraid and more isolated than they were before. And their children have no health care, and their grandchildren have no broadband in the rural areas. Their neighbors get no relief from the opioid abuse via cannabis. And their local hospital is closed because it can't operate without insurance reimbursement. And do you know the expression rubbing salt in the wound or adding insult to injury? After this fellow was elected, the Tennessee Senate named him the Senate chaplain because, of course, Tennessee has a Senate chaplain. Because of, wait for it, you know I'm going to say it, his strong defense of religious freedom. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all. This is my not bitter face. But the result of the election is not the end of the story, as you know, not even close. It's the beginning. So what do? Not run? Hide our beliefs? What can we take away from this experience? Here are some areas that I have identified. In March of 2018, thousands of Christian Democrats voted for an out and open atheist. This was in Tennessee, where even our Democrats are moderate. And they not only voted for, but they campaigned for, donated to, and visibly supported a non-believer, at times presumably risking friendship and social standing. Number two, we opened up and added not just locally and not just at the state level, but nationally to a conversation about an atheist running for office. That's an important discussion to be had, and it's the first step toward many others. Number three, how many times as non-believers do we get the "how can you be moral without religion" question tossed to us? Because the Tennessee GOP elevated my secularism in every newspaper interview and radio interview and public appearance and podcast where folks could ask questions, I got to answer that one over and over and over again about what it means to me to be a humanist. My story that I shared repeatedly is that both my life and my campaign are driven by equal parts reason and compassion. What moves me to act is the well-being of my neighbors, their very real joy and their very real suffering. My goal is to increase the joy and decrease the suffering. Number four, one of the great joys of the campaign was meeting fellow non-believers. So many times I was approached by someone who said, "I'm not a believer, but I'm not out in my town," or "I'm not a believer, but I can't tell my parents. And thank you for representing what we value." At one appearance, a young mother attended with her two young daughters. She's raising her girls to be free thinkers and wanted them to shake my hand and take a picture of a non-religious person in a leadership role in the community. And number five, a trail was blazed. The seal is broken. Never again can it be said that this is the first time an atheist has run for public office in Tennessee. The visual I like to use is the image of laying down the grass for those who come behind us. And while they can never again say this is the first time an atheist has run for state office in Tennessee, they will say, and maybe even about somebody not too far from now, never before has an atheist run for state office in Tennessee and won. So we circle back to the first question. Am I the most dangerous woman in Tennessee? And it won't surprise you, my answer in lawyerly flat fashion is, it depends. It depends on what you're afraid of. If you're afraid of a woman who will stand before hundreds and call out your bigoted and unconstitutional behavior, if you're afraid of a woman who will speak for those without a voice, for the disenfranchised, the underserved, the neglected, the poor, and the sick, if you're afraid of a woman who will relentlessly stand upon American secular values of truth, justice, equality, fairness, tolerance, education, and religious freedom for all, then the answer to the question of whether I'm the most dangerous woman in Tennessee is, you bet your sweet ass I am. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me through the most of that. Okay, so stop screen share.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, Eric. It was, at the time, it was not an easy journey. It was, it was arduous and painful and frustrating. Yeah. And then when I tell the story now, it's hysterical and funny and stupid and ridiculous. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah. One of the biggest questions I was thinking about is like, what would life be like for you now had you won that seat?
I know, right. Yeah, it was I had to make the commitment that had we won that seat, I was going to take it wherever it was going to go. Sometimes that may lead to long, state Senate in Tennessee's every 4 years. Maybe it would have been one term. This was even a partial term. So maybe it would have been more terms. Maybe it would have been different. Maybe it would have just been the remaining 3 years on that term. But it was I had to, in my mind, make the commitment. And most of I've moved out to Oregon. It was something that I chose to do when I didn't win office, but I was willing to not do that as much as I wanted to because of what it meant to have held that office.
You think you'll become the most dangerous woman in Oregon now?
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. It's whatever my community needs of me, however I can help most. It's not a throwaway for me to say, what skill set do I bring and what does my community need? I hope that we would all do that. I hope that we all look around and say, here's a thing I can do and here's a thing that needs what I can do. That's what brought me to RFR, and it's what brought me to running for office. And it's not a bad measure to determine how you spend your time.
Now, one of the earlier questions intrigued me. I don't know about state. I don't generally follow state politics where I am. Are there debates like there are at federal elections? Did you ever get to debate your opponent?
We got to do a forum. They refused to do a debate. Of course, we wanted to do a debate because really and truly the issues, we were on the right side of every issue. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased about the party or the position. We simply were. You can't look at the statistics in a rural area. All of those things that I mentioned, the opioids and the education and all of those things, we were on the right side. And so they would not engage in a debate. We got to do a forum, which they would ask a question and he could answer and then I could answer. And so we got to do a forum, and it was well attended, and it was awesome. It was wonderful. And he had the worst answers of all time. It was just terrible because when you have been in a position of privilege for so long, they have to do so little to continue to be elected. We have this happening at the national level, and I don't want to get too far into politics, but he was not ready with, they can say faith, freedom, family, and then they get elected because that is, we have that has happened in our country depending upon your party. So when we had the forum, it was, if you will allow me an evil chuckle, it was glorious.
What's kind of interesting, Gayle, is that I kind of have heard your story from where you were before you transitioned out of religion, and the kinds of topics that you talked about on your campaign, legalizing cannabis and getting affordable health care and those kinds of things. It seems like had you ran for office just maybe a decade earlier or 2 decades earlier, you would have been on the GOP side. Well, so was there a transition in your life from one side to the other?
There absolutely was. It's even hard for me to talk about because it makes me feel like what was I thinking? But of course, all of us that have come from religion have those moments. What was I thinking, or was I thinking? In my defense, back in the day when I was a Republican, things were a little bit different than they are now. Please tell me they were a little bit different than they are now. My husband at the time was former military. I was not politically active. I just voted Republican because my parents voted Republican, my husband voted Republican, and they seemed to be on the right side of the church where I attended. And the irony is, in my church, I was considered, a radical because I actually didn't comply, and I didn't run the party line for a lot of the issues. I didn't think it was evil or bad or wrong to be gay. And I taught my children that, even though church doctrine was and felt like that was a bad thing, I didn't think that women shouldn't have a right to choose, even when I was a religious person. So part of it is that. Part of it is I had a lot of children close together. My hands were full, my plate was full. And so I wasn't politically active at all. Had I given it some thought, more serious thought, which I did when I finally made my deconversion, I realized that I was on the wrong, that my former conservative opinions were, they weren't reasonable based on what our society was facing and the issues on anything. I wasn't on the right side of it. So I did make that transition. Me just chatting about this there, just with you, just as casually as possible, belies the tough journey that it was.
Yeah.
because like a lot of us, when I walked away from religion, everything about what I believed in changed. What I wanted my life to mean, how I wanted to plug into my community, how I wanted to be remembered, what my legacy was, how I wanted to continue to raise my children, although they were almost grown at the time. All of that changed. And so it was 15 years out, it's easy to look back and kind of be philosophical about it. At the time, it was arduous and difficult and frustrating and terrifying.
When you were being interviewed, or in fact, when you were talking to constituents, did any of them ask you why you converted, why you deconverted?
Yes, and Rob, I love that question. If I had to do it all over again, I would have been more vocal about that experience. It was so hard in these rural Tennessee rooms. A lot of it would be mostly men because of, I don't know, just the, part of the package. These are conservative Republican men. And I was trying not to make religion the issue because I knew I wasn't going to win on that. I was trying to make the issues the issues. If I had to do it all over again, I would have backed up and said, let me tell you why I feel like I feel. Let me tell you why I feel like the change that I can make here on this earth is what matters to me. And so it's hard to look at it in retrospect and know if it would have had any different outcome had I done that. I knew what I was up against with the religion thing, and I tried to make it about the issues. And so I don't know that there was, Tennessee is still in the same hot mess that it was, 6 years ago. It's not, nothing has changed. We don't have different leadership. We still have a Republican supermajority. We still have the same issues plaguing us.
I was more curious, not regarding whether you should have or would have said something that would have made a difference, but I was curious because people who know me, who know that I used to be religious, went to Catholic school for 12 years. They never asked me why I don't believe anymore. I think they're afraid of the answers. So I was wondering, just from that perspective.
I think you're right. I don't know specifically if anybody, I think you're right. I don't think they will really, really want to know that. And I read articles from Christian authors trying to explain why so many people are leaving church. And of course, their opinion is, well, because these folks want to, party and sin. And I just feel like
babies.
Have you asked?
Yeah, so
no, have you asked any of us, why we left? And maybe I talk a little bit about this in our family dynamic. My daughter that's in the room here with me, when we did our family journey away from religion, some of the kids, there was 4 children and me, and some of the children put a more higher premium on the fact that the Bible was anti-science. That bothered us. It was a big thing for me. It was, it's conflict. The sun and the earth and everything was it was so wrong about so many things. Glenda had an experience where it wasn't about it wasn't about the incorrectness of the science. It was about the immorality of it. And those two things don't necessarily have anything. They're both valid reasons for having walked away from the belief system. So there are more than one way to skin the proverbial cat. I hate that expression. I don't know why I use that one. There are different avenues away. And so each of the kids, according to who they were and what they did, came at it from a different angle, all valid. So yeah, it was a multifaceted, our deconversion process. And I say our as in my family, my children and I, because we didn't quite walk out hand in hand, but we were not far from it. It was all according to who they were and how old they were and their birth order and what their process was. But so no one would have asked me that.
So I got to get this out there because it's in the chat from one of your children, and people who are watching this on YouTube won't have heard it. There was also a huge social media discussion about how evil you were because you turned your children to atheism. You want to talk about that?
There was multiple social media discussions. There was everything from, yes, she turned her children into atheists and so she's going to burn in hell to it, to don't get close to her because, she may do the same thing to you. She's looking to make atheists of everybody everybody who comes in contact with her. She won't be happy until everybody is no longer a believer. So there was a lot of social media drama whenever I was running for office, and every post you know how it goes. You put stuff out on Twitter and Facebook, and my campaign manager was really good at social media. So we were constantly putting things out, and it poked the proverbial hornet's nest over and over and over again. It was just more than they just couldn't bear it. They could not let it go. And the corruption of our children, won't somebody think of the children? It was just relentless.
Yeah, Glenda probably wouldn't have her hair in all those weird colors if she was still a believer.
Right?
That's a
You
sin
say
against
weird.
nature.
You say weird, Rob, and I say beautiful.
It's a sin against nature, absolutely.
That's right.
If God
You
had
know,
intended
Gayle,
hair color like that, he would have made hair color like that.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
When I was kind of hearing you talk about the shift, I kind of heard you almost meant, or say that, like, not only did you inherit your religion, like you went with the religion of the people you grew up with, but you also inherited the political views as well. And I kind of hear that you were just so busy working with your family and kind of being a good Christian that you didn't have time, I guess, to think critically about these views. What kind of
Eric, it's it's real hard for me to hear it when it's like that. But honestly, it was simply, my life was so full, and we were in church every time the doors were open. It was a question of not reflect. I didn't have time for anything. I didn't have time. I had 4 children in 4 years, so it was getting enough food for all of them, and clean clothes, and getting them to school, and all the things was I just didn't have the brain space for anything else. So I'm not proud of that I didn't do a better job of that, of finding some way to think. Gosh, that was, that's hard to say, but that's the truth of it.
Well, tell me kind of what started that shift for you from being more conservative, more on the Republican side, over to the more liberal side. What was some of the triggers that you can recall or think of?
Well, I mean, those kids, they were just now the children. So I had 4 children in 3 years. I threw doubles the last time, so we had 4 children.
Snake eyes.
So they were all, yes, they all sort of went into adolescence one after another, all at the same time. And when they came to, I was so prepared. I was so hip. I was so prepared for them to come to me with Christian youth group questions. All the passages in the Bible that were anti-science, the passages about bashing the infants' heads on the rocks, that was troublesome. The talking donkey, I mean, all of it. And I expected that. I'm glad teenagers should do that. And I had taught these children that being a mom was the best thing I have ever done. I loved every minute of it, every dirty diaper, every meltdown, everything. I loved it. And they were such a joy. Watching them grow and learn was my everything. So when they were little bitty kids, we would find a bug we'd never seen before. This is pre-internet. And we'd go to the library and we'd find the book and we'd look up the bug and we'd learn something about the bug. And I had taught these children to be relentless in their pursuit of knowledge and truth and information. We valued highly education. So when they got to be teenagers and they had come out of their rural middle school and started going to high school, where they were exposed to a little bit more diversity. And they started asking those questions. And I said, those are very, very good questions. Let's see if we can get an answer. So we started with asking what I call inside the bubble. We started asking our youth minister and our pastor and our Sunday school teacher, what about all these things? What about the anti-science? What about the stuff that's so wrong? What about the talking donkey? What about all of this, the flood, the animals on that boat, millions of animals on that boat? And the religion has answers for that. They're not very satisfying answers. They're party line answers. There are answers. And so that we would come back together. And this is sort of over years. This is not condensed down to a week or so. This is over time. We would come back and we would talk about it again and try to share what we had learned. And then we started looking outside the bubble. We started reading about anthropology and history and other religions. They were exposed to believers of Islam at their high school. They were exposed to people who were from a vastly different viewpoint. All of those things factored into it. And very slowly, the children, according, as I said earlier, kind of according to their personality and their birth order, the oldest one stomped away, this is bullshit, I'm not, whatever. And then the other ones were more introspective, and it took a little bit longer. The girls lost a very close friend at the beginning of high school. It shouldn't make, he was a wonderful Christian young man. There is no reason, if God had anything to do with anything, that this young man should have died. That lots and lots and lots of things factored into the questioning and the process. I was tail end Charlie. I had such, I was a leader in my church. My former husband, we were leaders in our church. We had very positive experience in church. We were elevated. We were among the privileged few. We were looked up to. We were highly respected. I was so much more vested than the children were. So as they began to walk away and they started to leave me and go to college, and here I am, I stayed probably a year too long trying to fake it, teaching Sunday school that I didn't believe, trying to not do what I had to do, until finally, I drank too much. It was a bad time. I made some really bad calls, made some bad judgments, until finally I said, I can't, it's no longer a choice. I have to do this. I told everybody, I don't believe this anymore. The marriage that I thought was going to be at risk if I did that didn't survive. My parents melted down. My dad screamed at me and told me I was midlife crazy. It's the ugliest thing he could think. My mother wept. It was so painful and so hard, which is why I knew that was going to be part of it. And that's not even beginning to touch on the politics part of it. That was just the deconversion part of it. So all of that, I can summon that feeling in a second. And that's why I do what I do at RfR, because I'm so close to it, even though I'm years past. And even though I've gone through so much recovery, I can put myself there in an instant. And I know that panic, and I know that sorrow. I know that feeling. I know that grief. I also know what it's like on this side, and the light and the air and the space and the life that's on this side. And those two things, knowing that and this, is what keeps me doing what I do at RfR. I think that was not the answer to your question. I think we got off politics for a minute, but that's such a part of the story.
It sounds like that this kind of thing started to happen when you had a moment to yourself, when you had time to sort of not like, because you were talking about how your children were starting to leave one after another, and I'm seeing you kind of being left alone in your own thoughts too, to kind of seriously ponder this stuff.
And at the time, I know it's not accurate. At the time, I didn't know that I knew another non-believer, except for my own children, who had confided in me that they were losing confidence in their beliefs. I knew one atheist. He was an angry young white college boy. Surprise! Because it was that was the only one that I knew that was out. I think everything's different now. I think almost every person in this country knows someone who's an atheist. We use the word a little bit more comfortably. We know what our trajectory is for nuns, NONES, non-believers in this country. So I don't think it's not that it's any less difficult. I'm not saying that it's less arduous. I'm just saying it's not quite as shocking to hear that someone is a non-believer. So yeah, and so I think that people who are more who did carve out time for themselves to think these things through that I didn't do, or that didn't have quite the stack of 4 little bitty kids all at one time that I did, I think that people are coming out younger and younger. I think especially young people are saying, this is not relevant to me. It's not reasonable. It's in conflict with science. It's incongruent with what we know how the world works. And so I think that they leave earlier. And when you leave earlier and you're not so vested in it, maybe it's not quite so painful and not quite so arduous.
I assume your experience in that part of the country was mostly with white folks. When I get callers from RfR who are African American, they seem to still have more of an issue where it's a shock, and their family or friends don't know any atheists, and it seems like they're back 20 years regarding that subculture of America. It's
And I
kind of
think it's
surprising to me.
like everything else. It's compounded exponentially and made more difficult because of that, because of the, because of our history of race relations in our own country, because of the insidious nature of how religion teaches people to be subservient, even at their own expense. I think all of those things, and the Black non-believing community can make this point better than I can, that it's made that much worse all over again. It's such an identity. And to break away from that, even to break away to think about that, not just to say, okay, well, I'm ready to disbelieve. Just let me think about this. Let me have these doubts. Let me explore these questions. Religion gives lip service to that. If you go to a church and you say, oh, I'm having doubts, oh, everybody will pray for you and will work you through that. And they say that that's a good thing because then you'll be more confident in your beliefs. But it only goes so far. Because if you get to the point where you go, okay, well, good, I had the doubts and now I don't believe any longer. It's over. Party's over. Peace out.
Yeah,
See you later.
I just watched an Anthony Magnabosco video where the person he was interviewing was a Christian, as most of them are. And he was making a big point of there being a difference between having questions and doubting. And it's like, that wasn't sinking in my head, but to him, it was an important difference.
Maybe that's a piece of it. Yeah, like I said, if you were to ask a religious person or religious community, is it okay to have doubts? Oh, sure, of course it is. Of course it is. So read your Bible and pray about it, and let your fellowship of fellow believers pray about it. And then, but if you reach the wrong conclusion, their work here is done. It's over. It's finished.
One of the things that one of the things that happened to me, and inside of the support groups, I also hear this conversation too, is that we do not expect these shifts in our thinking of political topics or social situational topics. We expect these shifts, and it came as a surprise to me. And it came as a surprise to so many other people who were in these support groups meetings that I've been a part of with RFR. What was, so I kind of wanted to have this conversation about around that and kind of talk about how things shifted for you. So what was like the hardest thing to give up as you were transitioning out of religion when it came to your conservative background?
There's the infrastructure. The community was a tremendous loss. These were my friends. This was my community. This was everything. The belief part. Let me lie down on the couch for just a second and talk about this. No, the loss of the eternal parent that thought I was the cutest thing in shoe leather. We're taught that God loves us so much, and he sent his son to die for us, and he adores us, and he knows us, and he knows the number of hairs on our head. On this side of it, that is terrifying. At the time, if you have whether you've had a good relationship with a parent or not, when you feel that beloved, that, God killed his kid for you, well, there's guilt that's associated with that, but there's also, wow, he must really love me. And when you lose that, there's grief, there's a loss, it's sorrow. When you get on the back side of it, where you can see the needle point stitches a little bit better, and you see, well, there's nothing much worse than that you would have a parent breathing down your neck for your whole life, judging you and making sure that you were towing the line and threatening to punish you if you didn't. But that comes later. In the beginning, that's the loss of a parent, the loss of God who loved me more than anything was grief. The loss of my marriage was profound, still profound to this day, profound. I think, Eric, when you first started asking your question and you talked about how it takes us by surprise, I would probably have been one of those people who would have said, oh, my political beliefs have nothing to do with my religion. I've come to that conclusion on my own, and I wouldn't have thought those had anything to do with anything. And then as soon as you get away from that and you start thinking, about solutions to problems. When we are believers, the solutions to problems are, we pray about it. We accept that there will always be wars and rumors of wars. We accept that there are millions of children dying of hunger every day, and best we can do is pray about it, or maybe give a little bit of money to some org or something. When you walk away from that and there's nobody coming to rescue us, there's no hero at the end, there's no cosmic solution to this. It is on us as human beings. These are our problems for us to solve together. That was what made the change for me. That was what made me change from being a bootstraps kind of a person where you take care of yourself and I'll take care of myself, to, if I don't need your help now, it's just because I'm in a good place. There will come a time when I need your help, and there will come a time when you need my help. And that's what we do. And that's what makes us human. And that's the joy of being human. And that's so aligned with the other political party that's what it felt like for me to make my journey. That's where I feel like I transitioned, because I was no longer in a place where I could judge other people because they didn't live up to the standard of whatever it was they were supposed to be doing. Instead of being thoughtful and compassionate about life sucks sometimes, and it's hard sometimes, and we get dealt shitty hands sometimes, and we need each other sometimes. And so that's a big part of what drove that. And I would, at the time, I would not have said that had anything to do with my religious beliefs. I would have said whatever it was I would have said.
I just had a call yesterday about that subject where someone had stepped out. They decided they don't believe anymore. But then for some reason, he started talking about political question. He says, but I'll never believe that abortion is a murder. And maybe you will at some point. But he was like, oh, no, there's no way I can change my mind on that. I tried to do a little street epistemology on that subject.
Well, and as I near my twilight years, there's all the things that you said you would never do, you become softer to that. You recognize that you may not know everything you think you know, and that life has a way of changing us, and we do learn more things as we go. And instead of being so arrogant about, well, I'm never gonna, I try not to do that. I try to have a little bit of a sensitivity and stay receptive and stay open and keep learning and keep evolving and keep progressing and be open to what life has to teach you and where you have to go and to learn.
So Gayle, I think that you answered a different question that I asked brilliantly. Is beautiful.
I think I did it every time.
So I don't know if that was your way of like not answering the question, or if I didn't ask it right.
What was the question? Ask it again. It was something about how.
Eric, she answered every question I asked exactly as I anticipated.
Thank you. I like the way Rob is saying things to me.
So there are social issues out there like abortion or like welfare or infrastructure, education. And when I was religious, I had views of these social issues one way, and then as I came out, they shifted to a different way, and some were harder to give up than others. So for you, was it something that was like really quick, like, oh, was conservative, now I'm a liberal, or was there some difficult things to give up?
I am trying to be thoughtful about your question. No, I don't remember. Nothing stands out in my memory that was hard, that made me latch onto a belief that I had been vested in. Sometimes, Eric, I think that those beliefs that benefit us are the ones that are the hardest to let go. And I know since we've already done politics, we may as well talk about sex and gender, because I think sometimes men struggle with that more because they have been in such an elevated position. Religion has done it, politics has done it, our country's history has done it. It may be harder for men to let some of those things go because it takes you out of the top of the food chain, so to speak. And women have not occupied that top position. So it's easier for us to go, oh, I see how life can be unfair. I see how if you have all of these strikes against you from the beginning. You know, life is not remotely fair. And even though as a political party, we on my side try to make things as equal as possible, we'll never reach that. Doesn't mean we can't strive to reach it. So I think your question is, I don't remember anything once I dropped the belief in the supernatural and I realized that this is on us. My reasonable, thoughtful approach was easy enough to go, okay, I think this political party aligns more closely with me. And while it was still a journey of learning, and it still is, and I still am finding things out about my country's history, and you know, that are unpleasant, that I don't love. Too bad, so sad. You know, I have to get over myself. So I don't think I can answer that question with any one thing being any harder than any other.
I love that answer, to be perfectly honest. That's very kind of similar to me. Like once I realized, hey, we're all we have. This is it. The problems that we've made, and the problems that we've got, we can solve if we work together. We can't just wait for some daddy in the sky to figure it out for us.
Right. It's on us. It's on us. And that's, you know, to come full circle, that's what made me motivated to run. When I say that in my talk about what moves me is making my community a better place, caring about people's real suffering and caring about their well-being. And we have the ability to make things better for people. We as a society, we as a government, we as a country, we have that ability. And I know I have lived a pretty privileged life. I have expectations of myself to be able to give back, to contribute, and maybe some, you know, in some way I can, because I have that responsibility. You know, I think it's even in the Bible. I think all religions have some variation of to whom much is given, much is expected. And that's a personal philosophy too. I know how fortunate I have been. I have these incredible kids and this incredible life and this fabulous partner and this wonderful job and all of these things. I don't just get to sit here in my hot tub of goodness and soak it all up. I have to give back. I have to share. I need and want to do that.
When does it become overwhelming for you, like this huge feeling of responsibility?
100% of the time.
Yeah.
100% of the time. I'm absolutely, I am so overwhelmed by where we are in this country. I can't articulate it. I have trouble speaking about it because I am so confused about where we are. I'm so frustrated about where we are. I'm so sad about where we are when we have so much and we're not doing the best we can, not by a long shot. So yes, it overwhelms me all the time. I have learned that I have to sit with some of that. I try not to blip over it. I talked a little bit about that, about not having time to reflect on things when my children were little. I try not to do that quite so much anymore. If I'm in sorrow, if I am freaked out about what's happening, I instead of, oh, I got to find something else to do, I'll go read a book, I'll go watch a program, I'll go listen to a podcast. I don't do that. I sit in it and I reflect on it and I let it wash over me and I'm overwhelmed. I don't think I don't know if that's good or not. It's just how I deal with it. I let it make me sad. I let it make me mad. I let it inspire me to say, okay, get a grip. I can't fix the whole country. Can I fix my little corner of it? Can I make RFR better? Can I help my kids do better? Can I help my little tiny town do better? Okay. And then I can catch my breath and I'm no less overwhelmed, but I'm focused and directed and I'm able to do something. And that is why I'm here. It's why I do what I do.
It's beautiful. Rob, do you have any other questions?
No, that was a very, very intriguing discussion, I must say. Thank you, Gayle.
Thank you everyone for being here. It was, as I said, I should be lying on a couch. This was therapeutic for me. I love sharing the story of politics because it's funny and, you know, poor little Tennessee. I've often said the Republicans gave me this narrative. I didn't do it. gave me this whole talk. So thanks, guys. And it's important to share because people who don't live in the South have no clue what that's actually like there. This is genuine and real. And people who say that there's no racism or there's none of that kind of stuff, you ain't from Tennessee. So it helps me to shed some light on some very real problems. And so thank you for letting me share all this. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. We this is a little bit shorter than we normally have, and the questions that we had in the chat, we've actually asked you all already. So we're about ready to. Oh, here we go. Have any? So here's another question. Has back to your campaign days. After that, you kind of got that attention. Have there been any other potential candidates who have reached out to you for advice on how to run a campaign?
Yeah,
and if so, what advice would you give to somebody?
Sure. I tried to always keep the focus. The reason I was running when I first started running, because I was already the executive director of RfR, and I was known in the secular community. The secular world was lovely, so supportive and so wonderful and so awesome. And they donated and they volunteered, and that was awesome. But it was very important for me to stay focused on my people. The reason I was running was for the people in my district and the things. Sorry, Darrel is in a conversation.
Oh, I was confused. I'm hearing Darrel, but he's muted. He's coming through your microphone.
He's in my living room.
Oh.
So he's just right downstairs. No, I wanted to make sure that I was not running to be the first atheist to run in first state office in Tennessee. I was not running to be a secular senator. I was not running to be any of those things. I was running because I felt like I could make a difference in the lives of the people in my district, my neighbors that needed help. They needed their rural hospitals not closing. They needed broadband for their children. They needed to pass cannabis legislation so we could get something going on the opioid crisis. And so when people reach out to me, one of the first, if they're running as a secular person, especially in a religious area, is to say, look, this is not about being a secular person. That may be incidental to your run, but your heart and your focus has to be on your people. And if it's on that you're going to be this first atheist to run for whatever in whatever state, my suggestion is go find something else to do. That'd be the worst motivation to run. That's the first thing that I tell them. The second thing is don't be afraid of your story. That thing that I said about when Rob asked that question, I might push a little harder on why not necessarily why I left religion, but why I moved to do good things, why I moved to run for office, why I want to have this ability to help with legislation is because I care about my neighbors. I care about their well-being. The reason I care about this, that wasn't an anti-religion message that I care about people. Between you and me and the fence post, this is the only life we know we get. And so I stayed away from that expression too. If everyone has to, if anyone is running for office or running for, even if you're running for school board or dog catcher or whatever it is, you have to make the determination on how you want to run. But my primary piece of advice would be to ensure absolutely positively that you are running for the reason to help make life better in your community, period.
That's great. We got another question that came in. You, in your talk, you had mentioned that there was a letter that was sent out to all the pastors, and the pastors unconstitutionally broke their nonprofit promise and talked to their congregation about it. Were you able to follow up with any legal action on that kind of situation?
Another good question, Eric. We talked about it. We didn't. I spoke with the legal representatives at FFRF and at American Atheist. And I did that before we ever even had when it became obvious that we were having this big church state separation thing, when Dawkins chimed in and Franklin Graham chimed in, and I called them and I said, is there any, what advice do you have for me? I was in the middle of it. Now I have hindsight on looking back on it. Should I have made a bigger deal about it? I would have liked for the people in my district to understand what separation of church and state is, so that when
Mhm.
this other guy gets elected and he gets made chaplain because of his strong defense of religious liberty, I wanted them to understand that's not exactly what happened here. Religious liberty is religious freedom for everyone, not just your flavor. That, that's a civics conversation. I don't know that a politician can, maybe if I had been elected, maybe I had this vision, I had this idea of having these community town meetings, not to persuade them of my way of thinking, but to review the Constitution and to understand why would that have been let's just talk about that. Why would that have been unconstitutional? What foundational promise are we breaching here when the pastor stands up there and tells you, who to vote for? I would like to have done that because I guess maybe I'm a teacher at heart, but that never got to go full cycle. I didn't pursue any kind of legal action. I dropped off into obscurity because if you don't win the election now, I'm, just whatever. So I never got to help those folks that voted for what they thought was a defense of religious freedom by voting for the other guy. And that, you can't accomplish everything. So I had to let some of that go. So
there's a question in the chat, which I'm not sure if you covered. If you did, I missed it. What did you do before you were a lawyer? And I'd add to that, what made you decide to go into law?
So before I was a lawyer, I was a stay-at-home mom. I was a stay-at-home mom forever. And I had always wanted to go to law school, but it just didn't happen for me when I was young. And so I decided to go when I was 50, and I started law school when I was 50. And now I have, as you mentioned, an estate planning practice, and I have this work that I do here at RfR, and I have this place out in Oregon, and that's what I do now.
What drew you to the law, though?
What drew me to the law? Oh gosh, the reason anybody's a lawyer, because I'm going to make things fair and just, because I have the ability to do that. And I am insatiable for knowledge. I wanted to go to law school because I wanted to know. I wanted to learn about the law. I wanted to learn about the history of law. I wanted to learn about our Constitution. I wanted to learn. And when you go to law school, you don't necessarily major in anything. You get to learn all of that stuff. So my motivation for law school was as much the knowledge as it was the career.
I'm not so sure every person goes into the law. That my ex-brother-in-law is a lawyer, and I just think he wanted to argue in court. I mean, he just liked that idea.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we like that part too, but I can't imagine making a career decision for that, or the money. Don't do that. Don't do it for that either, because it's not. You got to love what you're doing, and then if you happen to choose an area of practice where the money comes rolling, then bully for you. But I wouldn't choose that as the motivation.
We got another question. You had mentioned there was a chaplain in the Senate of the Kentucky or Tennessee State Senate. We have this separation of church and state rule that's baked into the Constitution. So how can that be legal? How do they get away with it?
I bet Rob has an answer for that too. Did you know that there are 7 state constitutions that disallow atheists running for office, and Tennessee's one of them? It says that, and I think the way the Tennessee Constitution reads is you have to have a belief in a higher power, something, because, Eric, we live in a Christian nationalist society, and that's exactly why that we have things like a Senate chaplain. We have it at the national level. That's not. Yeah. It's just it's the bleed over, and it's the misunderstanding of people understanding what the separation of church and religion is. It's just, and it's our legacy as our country, and it's why we're in the hot mess that we're in, quite frankly, if you want to ask me. But yeah, and that's not even Tennessee. Was trying to pass legislation, tried for years, and finally passed legislation to make the Bible the state book. We also have, not to get into, we've touched on every controversial subject, so I guess I'll keep going. We have in Tennessee a state gun. Now, you would think it might be something that had to do with the Tennessee Volunteers, or
that's really what comes. Yeah.
It is a semi-automatic modern weapon is our state gun. So I can't hardly begin to answer the question, why would there be
Does every state have a state gun?
No,
Colorado, yeah, Colorado does look.
I'm sure Colorado.
Mwah. You guys all got tickets to the gun show.
Well, Tennessee has a state gun.
Jeez Louise.
I know. So proud.
Well, Gayle, my friend, I can't again thank you so much for being here. Before we kind of wrap up and conclude, do you have any final thoughts or things that you wanted to cover that we didn't talk about?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this story. As I said, at the time it was difficult, and now it's a funny story to tell, but I hope that there's a takeaway from it. And that is, if we need reminding, the power of religion in the lives of people can make people do things that otherwise they wouldn't necessarily do. I don't think this opponent that I had and his campaign manager and his whole team, I don't think they're bad, evil people, but they did bad things. They did unconstitutional, unethical things because they were driven by power. They were driven by their faith, their belief that they were right, and that at all cost, whatever it took for them to win this campaign, they were to win. So it's important for us, as I said, to sit with it, it's important for us to recognize those things for what they are. And this opportunity has been, especially before the home team crowd, it's just been awesome to share this story with you. And thank you for all of your questions. And thank you for coming and attending week to week. And Eric and Rob, thank you for your awesome job. And Glendy for troll smashing and all that.
Thank you so much, Gayle. It's a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up another RfRx. Like I had promised at the beginning, wasn't it fantastic? Yes, it was. But this isn't going to be our last one. Oh, no, not by a long shot. We want to hit that 100. We're almost there. We're almost at our 2-year mark with RfRx. So next week, we're going to have our very own Helen Green come on. You've seen her co-hosting here. And it is going to be a religion spotlight. We haven't had one of those in a while. This one specifically is on paganism. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, paganism, the positive, the perils, and the problems with an ancient new religion. So pagans, the word alone can conjure many images to the mind. Witches casting spells over a cauldron in the moonlight, ancient Rome with their debauchery and hedonism, ancient Aztecs, human sacrifices to appease the gods, modern Druids gathered at Stonehenge of the summer, all this fun stuff. Helen Green is a former words are so hard for crying out loud. Helen Green is a former pagan high priestess, educator, and now RfR ambassador. Wow. She'll join us for a talk on what pagans believe and practice, its recent history and development, why those leaving organized religions are attracted to the earth-centered religions, and the positive and negative impacts of modern pagan culture. I'm really looking forward to that one. Rob,
I got to tell you, Eric, until I joined RfR as volunteer, I never met a pagan, and now they're come out of the woodwork. It's like every 10th caller. Well, I don't believe in Jesus anymore, but the spiritual Druid thing is right. I was like, oh my God, what? It's like it seems to be a common stepping stone out totally. It's like
you're absolutely right. That's
amazing.
One of the things that I went through myself transitioning was like paganism, and then it was like conspiracy theories and naturopathy and all that. It was this clear stepping stone path for me.
Wow. Okay, so as a final thing, we're going to remind you that soon this recording will be up on YouTube, and all of our previous recordings, 93 now, can be found on our YouTube channel, and I believe Eric will paste a link in there. And if you have any questions or comments, inquiries at all, either about this presentation or anything else, you can send them to our email at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And as we mentioned before, very important is we have a blog, which is on medium.com. And we also have a podcast, which the earlier ones were actually 2 folks, I believe, talking about general topics of the day, but all the current ones are the audio version of the RfRx talks.
And we also are all over the social medias. If you can't donate, if you can't volunteer, engage with us, follow us, share us all over social medias. It really, really does help out quite a bit. And if you want to learn more about upcoming RfR stuff or recently published videos, excommunication blogs, the RfR blog posts, sign up for our newsletter. Now, I am going to turn this over to our founder and president, Dr. Darrel Ray. Before he comes on, I want to get your feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a feedback poll here, and I want to kind of hear what you thought of this talk so we can help direct programming in the future. So while that's going, Dr. Darrel Ray, how are you doing and what have you got to say?
Oh, I'm having fun listening to Gayle. I've heard this talk probably, I don't know, 3-4 times, and it's always fun. It's just fun because very few people have the guts to stand up and thumb their nose at the establishment so openly. So that's one thing I love about Gayle. And right now I'm at Gayle's house because I came out here to do some strategizing and planning with her. And I just happened to be strolling in her gardens and I noticed a certain plant that she wants to legalize, but it's already legalized here in Oregon, I guess. I hope I'm not outing her or anything. Also, I watched throughout these campaigns and I was cheering for her and I was not cheering for her because I was afraid if she actually won, then we'd totally lose her to RfR. And I didn't really want to lose Gayle, but I won't say I'm glad she lost, but I'm sure glad we kept her. I don't know how to put that properly. Anyway, otherwise, thanks, Gayle, for doing this. And back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up the show for today. I want to thank everybody who helped out. Glenda, thanks for smashing those trolls. Dr. Ray, thanks for wrapping things up for us. Sasha, I think you helped out with some of the troll smashing as well. And Rob, you were a fantastic co-host. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Wells.